We are talking the Baylock Residence. This haunting ghost story was directed and written by Anthony M. Winson. Now, Winson actually had made this movie once before in 2014 for a kind of pocket change, basically, as a kind of a homemade movie. And here he is in 2019, remaking the film essentially with a slightly larger budget, although it's still a very low budget movie, apparently, according to IMDb, less than £5,000. Now, it is a World War II era set, Britain, and we have this woman who is going to the kind of her late sister's house. Her sister has died under mysterious circumstances, and she is going to the house and discovers that this house has been left to her in the will. And along with the house, there is also a kind of a live-in maid. And this woman, who is the kind of the younger sister, obviously stays in the house, but she experiences strange supernatural phenomena, along with the added threat of potentially German planes coming over and bombing them in the Blitz. So it's kind of double jeopardy here. And as the movie progresses, we learn that the threats may be worse than your garden variety poltergeist, and may actually entail Satanists and kind of maybe threats that even go further than that. So let's discuss the Baylock Residence. So as I've said, the budget here is extremely low. So I was going to have my expectations set fairly low with this one, to be honest. But I was surprised at the amount that they have got out of such a small budget. It being a kind of a sort of mid-40s set movie, I was surprised at the level of set design, costuming, kind of like, you know, period accurate kind of cars that are kind of driving around. There's even an attempt at some kind of CGI bombed out streets of kind of Blitz era Britain here as well, which I thought was pretty impressive. And there are a few things here that have quite a few extras kind of hiding out in shelters with the kind of the Blitz that's happening and all of that. So I've got to say, every penny of this kind of like this meager budget has been spent very well on this scene. And like I said, the attention to detail for such a kind of a low budget film is quite impressive. As is the story, I would say. The story here is your kind of classic era kind of ghost story. Now, in the press release I got for this, it was described as the Conjuring meets Downton Abbey. And I would see why you would say that, but this kind of actually reminds me of the early 80s and 70s kind of TV specials that used to go over Christmas of like kind of ghost stories, kind of like dramatisations that you'd get on British TV. Now, if you're of a certain age, like me, you kind of know what I'm talking about here. These kind of like these, they're often forgotten about Wuthering Heights style kind of like classic kind of ghost stories that were kind of just made for kind of the TV, and it has that kind of feel to it. It has that very much a British TV look feel. I think it's something to do with like the frame rate that is kind of used here with the cameras and stuff like that. So it doesn't have that kind of like that sheen maybe that kind of a lot of films actually do. It has that sort of that studio kind of that look. It's hard to describe. You know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. But nonetheless, I've got to say, it's a fairly impressive movie for such a kind of a low budget. And I've got to say, the script as well is fairly tightly written. Obviously, this movie was actually made once before by Winson back in 2014. So I'm assuming, obviously, he's had the past few years to kind of really kind of work on his craft and make it a, somewhat of an impressive script to a certain degree, until we get to the end. But we'll come on to that. But yeah, I've got to say, I thought the pacing was good. I thought the character development was good. The kind of the interactions between our two kind of main female leads here, I thought was all pretty good. And like I said, just the kind of the set design, stuff like that, all pretty impressive. And there are some kind of like, it's not a horror film per se. Don't be expecting levels of, there's no gore here. There are a couple of kind of creepy moments, but it's mostly kind of stuff which is doors slamming, kind of chairs moving, that sort of thing. There's a couple of attempts at using camera trickery to kind of give you the image of kind of supernatural shenanigans, and there's a couple of instances where I think it does a pretty good job. Again, albeit in a kind of a low budget fashion. If you've seen movies like The Haunting of Borley Rectory, which I reviewed a short time ago, it's in that vein of kind of film, the kind of the classic kind of Wuthering Heights style kind of like ghost sort of story. that you would sort of see in British TV ultimately. But the thing is with this film, obviously it is a very low budget film, and that is going to obviously play a plot here. The actresses I don't think do necessarily a bad job, but you can tell that they're a little bit unconfident in the role, but certainly not bad. I will say some of the kind of the smaller kind of like members of the cast, more background actors to be fair, are kind of quite overacting, shall we say. There is one scene, however, with this kind of little boy, which I thought was incredibly cute, and he actually did a nice job, actually, I must say. But some of the kind of background actors, when they're looking out in certain scenes, look a little bit kind of like overacted, to be honest. The main issue I have with this movie is I feel the ending is actually quite weak. Without kind of going into spoilers, the reveal, shall we say, about the antagonist, from that point onwards, I suppose, is the last sort of 10 15 minutes. It kind of lost me, I will say, and lost me quite hard, because up to that point I felt the movie had quite a compelling narrative, and you know, was like I said, like a classic era kind of ghost story. You know, nothing too kind of like outrageous and kind of, but just spooky and kind of a creepy atmosphere. You know, things that kind of go bump in the night. And then, you know, I applaud the ambition to have it maybe to go in a more sort of otherworldly direction, shall we say, but I did not think it worked. And we have the reveal of our antagonist. To me, that they just kind of nosedived a little bit in regards to just the tangibility of the plot and kind of where I thought the story went and how it was filmed as well. I actually thought the last 15 minutes were quite poor. But up until that point, you know, some kind of shaky acting, some, you know, not quite authentic, but still a very good attempt at kind of like period drama here. A few little minor nitpicks as well. There's a few scenes where we have like flashback kind of narration and radio, and the kind of the voice is modulated to the point where it's nearly in you know, you can't even understand what it's saying. It's too messed around with too much to a certain degree. But I've got to say, it's still a good attempt at such a low budget film, and I feel there is definite market for this sort of thing. I feel this is kind of, this is aimed to like an older audience, I would say, like, you know, people in their 50s and 60s, I would say, who have enjoyed the kind of like the, you know, the Emily Bronte type films and that sort of thing, and kind of classic kind of like ghost stories that aren't kind of slam bam and all that. I feel this is a good film for that sort of market. But I feel maybe today's audience is maybe one a little bit more kind of gratuitous, to be honest, a little bit more meat on the bone, so to speak, in regards to scares and gore and stuff like that. This is a very subtle film, but certainly I feel worth a look if you like that sort of style film. Slow burn, creepy, but not kind of overtly kind of like horror movies. Paranormal drama, I guess, is maybe a more apt description of this film. But I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 because I feel the actual budget here and what they've done with such a kind of a low budget is very impressive, despite the fact that I feel the ending really kind of takes some points off here. It would have been probably a high mark had it not been for the ending for me. But it's still actually an above average film considering the budget for me. So 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.